Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into America at the turn of the century. You wake on a rough bed, the air cold against your skin, the room is crowded, every creak of the floorboards carrying through thin walls. You hear distant voices, smell smoke and cooking that isn't yours, feel the weight of a world that isn't your own. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you'd like, leave a comment sharing where you're listening from, or which moment in history you'd most want to wake up in. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie on a narrow iron frame, the mattress thin and lumpy beneath you. Straw pokes through the fabric, scratching your shoulder as you shift. The quilt, patched a dozen times, does little against the chill that creeps through cracks in the window pane. You curl your legs tighter, drawing warmth from your own body. Your breath turns faintly visible in the dim morning light that seeps through a grimy curtain. The sound of boots scuffing above your head rouses you fully. Pipes rattle in the wall, carrying the faint echo of water drawn 3 floors up. Someone coughs down the hallway. A deep rattle that lingers too long. You recognize the tone. The neighbor's lungs have been weak since winter began. You press your bare feet to the floorboards. They are icy, the cold seeping instantly into your skin. Dust coats your toes. You pause, steadying yourself as you listen. From beyond the thin walls you hear a baby crying, a kettle shrieking, a woman muttering prayers in a language you can't fully catch. The tenement is alive already. This building, crammed with dozens of families, never truly sleeps. Even in the quietest hours, someone stirs, someone works late, someone sings softly to themselves after a shift that stretched too long. Records suggest that in these years, nearly 3/4 of New York's residents were either immigrants or their children, and you can feel that mix of worlds pressed into the walls around you. You stretch, your joints stiff from another restless night. Your body is young, but not untouched by labor. At 16, you already feel older in some ways than you should. Some letters from reformers of the time hint that boys and girls your age often carried the strength of men by necessity, their hands calloused, their backs shaped by long hours. You know that truth in your bones. A faint smell of boiled cabbage lingers in the stairwell, mixed with coal smoke that drifts in from the street. It is both unpleasant and oddly comforting, a sign of life pressing forward in crowded quarters. Your stomach reminds you that you haven't eaten since a crust of bread before bed. Hunger wakes with you each morning, familiar as breath. You step to the small basin in the corner, splash water onto your face. It's icy, sending a shock through your body, but it clears the cobwebs of sleep. A cracked mirror reflects your pale skin, the shadows under your eyes, the hair mussed by restless turning. You glance quickly, and then look away. No need to dwell on your own reflection when the day ahead already looms so large. Outside the window, a horse snorts. Hooves clatter as a wagon rolls down the cobblestones. The vendor calls out, his voice rough with the cold. Fresh rolls, hot rolls. The smell of baked bread drifts faintly upward, teasing, impossible to ignore. You know a roll costs 2 cents, more than you can spare this morning. Still, the thought lingers. You hear your neighbor's door open, the shuffle of multiple feet, the clamor of voices. An entire family moves down the stairwell, children whispering, their father barking in Irish-accented English to hurry along. The building trembles slightly as they descend. Every board creaks under the weight of so many lives pressed together. You pull on your shirt, the fabric worn thin at the elbows. Boots scuffed from years of use go onto your feet, laces fraying but still holding. A cap hides your unkempt hair. You rub your hands together for warmth and prepare to step into the hallway. The corridor is narrow, walls stained with soot from countless lamps. Someone has left a bucket near the door, filled with ashes from last night's stove. You navigate around it carefully. A child's chalk drawing on the wall catches your eye, stick figures and wobbly shapes, perhaps a sun. Even here, amid dirt and shadow, someone has tried to mark joy. You descend the stairwell slowly. Each step groans beneath you. A rush of cold air greets you as the door at the bottom swings open, someone leaving ahead of you. Outside, the city waits, restless, relentless. When you step into the street, the world expands suddenly. The narrow walls of the tenement give way to cobblestones slick with frost. Smoke pours from chimneys, mingling with the steam that rises from grates in the pavement. The smell is thick, coal, manure, fried onions from a vendor's cart already sizzling though dawn has barely broken. Carriages rattle past, their wheels striking uneven stones. A streetcar clangs its bell as it approaches the corner, sparks flashing from its lines. You feel the vibration through your boots as iron meets iron. The driver, hunched against the cold, calls for passengers to make room. The car is already full, faces pressed against glass, breath fogging the windows. You breathe in deeply, though the air carries grit. This is life at the start of the 20th century, crowded, cold, pungent, yet alive with movement. Historians sometimes debate whether the city at this time felt more like promise or peril, and as you stand here, it feels like both. The sun pushes faintly through clouds, weak light painting the tops of buildings. Laundry hangs frozen stiff between windows. A dog darts across the street, narrowly avoiding a wagon. A policeman shouts at a vendor, blocking the walkway with his cart of apples. You pull your coat tighter. The day has begun, and with it the endless rhythm of survival in the new century. Bells will ring soon. The city calls, and you, young but already weathered, take your first steps deeper into its pulse. You step further into the street, shoulders brushing against strangers as the narrow walkway fills with people. The tenement doors release family after family, streams of workers spilling out as though the building itself cannot hold them. Their footsteps merge into a steady rhythm, boots and shoes striking cobblestones, a chorus of urgency that grows louder with every block. The air is sharp, carrying the mixed scents of horse manure, roasting chestnuts and coal smoke that hangs like a permanent veil over the neighborhood. You pull your coat tighter, though the fabric is thin, patched at the elbows and frayed at the cuffs. Breath clouds rise before every mouth you pass, turning the morning into a blur of misty shapes. A boy no younger than 16 balances a tray of newspapers, shouting headlines with a cracked voice. Steel prices rise. Labour strikes spread. His cry cuts above the crowd, though most passers-by hurry on, coins too precious to spare. Records suggest that by 1900, more than 1 million people in the city lived within a few miles of these streets, and you feel the weight of that truth in every shove and jostle. A trolley bell clangs at the corner. Men in heavy coats cling to its sides, faces half hidden by scarves. The vehicle grinds to a halt, sparks flashing as metal scrapes metal. You glimpse the pressed bodies inside, standing shoulder to shoulder, heads bent to avoid contact, a portrait of discomfort and necessity. Letters from travellers of the time hint that the stench of sweat, tobacco, and damp wool inside was sometimes unbearable, but the ride spared aching feet. You pass a grocer setting out barrels of apples, the skins dulled from winter storage. He wipes frost from the fruit with a rag before stacking them neatly. A woman in a shawl haggles over a price, her hands red from the cold. Her voice rises, sharp then softens when the grocer slips an extra apple into her bag. A small kindness, unspoken but not unnoticed. Somewhere above, laundry lines sway gently between brick walls. Shirts, stockings, and aprons stiffen in the cold air, like frozen flags marking invisible borders. A pigeon flutters between them, wings brushing cloth, before settling on a sill to peck at crumbs. The sidewalks grow tighter as you near the avenue. A policeman waves his arm, urging a cart driver to move along. Hooves clatter, wheels rattle, and the cart inches forward, piled high with sacks of flour. You feel the vibration in the ground as it rolls past, the smell of grain dust mingling briefly with the stench of manure. Your own steps quicken to match the pace around you. Everyone seems pressed by the same invisible hand of time. Bells will ring soon, factory whistles shrieking like iron-throated alarms, and no one dares arrive late. A man beside you, older with soot-blackened fingers and a cough that racks his body, mutters about the cold. He clutches a tin lunch pail against his chest. When he sees you glance, he nods briefly, eyes tired but acknowledging. For a moment you sense a shared understanding. Different lives, perhaps, but bound by the same streets, the same struggle. At the corner, a preacher stands on a wooden crate, voice booming despite the morning din. Repent, for the city swallows you whole. Some pause to listen, others sneer, most walk past without slowing. Records suggest such street sermons were common, but not everyone agreed on their effect. Some called them a nuisance, others swore they gave strength through the grind of the day. A sudden commotion breaks the rhythm. A horse rears, startled by the clang of a dropped pan from a vendor's stall. Shouts rise as people scatter, skirts swishing, boots slipping on wet stones. The driver pulls hard at the reins, the animal's eyes wide, nostrils flaring steam. You feel your pulse quicken, breath sharp in your chest, until at last the horse steadies, hooves striking sparks as it calms. The crowd reshapes itself almost instantly, as though nothing had happened, life resuming its ceaseless march. As you move again, your eyes catch a street musician setting up near the corner. His violin is scratched, the bow patched with string, yet the notes he draws are surprisingly sweet. The melody rises above the clang and shuffle, lingering in the cold air like a thread of warmth. A few pause to listen, coins dropping into the open case, others tapping their boots to the beat before rushing on. The sound follows you half a block, refusing to let go. Further along, a cafe door swings open. A blast of heat and the unmistakable smell of coffee spill into the street. You glimpse men in bowler hats bent over their cups, steam rising between them. They speak quickly, their papers spread across the tables, voices edged with business and politics. You linger a moment at the threshold, the warmth brushing your cheeks before the door swings closed and the cold clamps down once more. The gas lamps along the avenue flicker faintly in the daylight, their posts streaked with soot. Records suggest that by now some blocks were wired for electricity, but not all, so at night the city shimmered with a strange mix of gas-like glow and new electric glare. Some claimed it made the city feel enchanted, others said it only deepened the shadows. A motor car coughs as it passes, its engine loud and uneven. The driver, goggles pulled over his eyes, waves at the jeers from boys chasing behind. Automobiles are still rare enough here to draw a crowd. Most still trust the steady pace of horses. The exhaust stings your nose, sharp and acrid, but you can't look away. Something about the machine feels like a glimpse of the future itself, rattling past in smoke and iron. Ahead, two men argue, their voices roughened by long hours. One insists the factory pay will rise with the new contracts. The other scoffs, saying owners never change without a fight. Their words clash, mingling with the clang of trolley bells and the hiss of steam vents. You don't stay to hear the end. Your own path presses forward, but their dispute echoes in your mind. Another reminder of how fragile hope feels in these streets. The avenue opens before you now, wider, louder, filled with the cacophony of early 20th century America. Towering advertisements painted on brick walls boast soap tonics, sewing machines. Carriages compete with the new automobiles that sputter and cough as they rattle along. Drivers shouting for space. The city feels alive, immense, overwhelming. Every sound, every smell, every face pressing upon you at once. You inhale, lungs filling with smoke and cold air, and you step forward, one more figure absorbed into the restless tide. The sound arrives before you see it. A long, metallic wail tearing through the morning air, echoing off brick walls and narrow alleys. The factory whistle. It drags at every body in earshot, pulling them forward as though a rope has been tied around their chests. You feel it in your ribs, a vibration that settles deep into bone. The crowd reacts instantly. Feet quicken, shoulders hunch, eyes drop to the ground. Conversations stop mid-sentence. It is not a sound of invitation, but of command. The whistle does not care for stories, prayers, or bargains. It orders, and people obey. You join the flow, pressed among dozens who pour toward the looming building ahead. The The street narrows near the factory gates, wagons stacked with raw cotton and barrels of oil, forcing pedestrians into tight channels. The air grows heavier, thick with dust, and the faint sweetness of lint. You taste it before you can even see the machinery. A line forms at the gate. Men cough into their sleeves. Women adjust shawls. Some carry metal lunch pails. Others nothing but calloused hands. The whistle blasts again, shorter this time, urgent, and the gatekeeper waves the line forward. Boots scuff stone as the workers file in, one by one, the rhythm of entry practiced from countless mornings. To your left, a boy about your age tries to light a cigarette, the match trembling in the breeze. The flame sputters, then catches, flaring against his hollowed cheeks. He inhales too deeply, coughs and laughs it off, eyes watering. No one spares him more than a glance. Smoke joins the haze already hanging over the yard. The gates creak as they swing wider. Inside, the yard is littered with scraps of wood and splinters of rope from yesterday's shipments. A wagon waits, its horses stamping impatiently. A team of men wrestles a bale of cotton from its bed, the fibres bursting slightly at the seams, releasing a puff that settles like snow over their coats. For a moment the air is soft, white, deceptively gentle, then the bale slams down and the illusion shatters. The building towers above you, brick walls streaked with soot, windows grimy with years of dust. Some panes are cracked, others propped open with bits of wood to let the air flow, though the air inside will be anything but clean. Above, the smokestacks already belch grey clouds, trailing across the pale morning sky. You pass through the doorway, shoulders brushing the rough brick. The sound changes instantly. Outside, the city was a chorus of bells, hooves, and shouting. Inside, the world belongs to machines. A steady roar fills the cavernous space, a sound that never pauses, not even for a heartbeat. It presses against your ears, rattles your teeth, drowns every thought. You open your mouth to breathe, but even your breath feels stolen by the rhythm of iron. The floor stretches out before you, rows upon rows of spinning frames, each taller than a man, each armed with whirring spindles and belts that whip overhead like black snakes. Oil drips onto metal trays, hissing faintly. The smell is sharp, a mix of grease, damp cotton and sweat. Lights hang low, their glow dim, leaving corners in shadow. Workers move quickly, weaving between machines, sleeves rolled high, skirts pinned back, hair tied tight, fingers dart in and out of the spindles, guiding threads that dance too fast for the eye to follow. The machinery demands small sacrifices of skin, nicked knuckles, blistered palms, and takes them without apology. You glance at your own hands, already roughened, and know they will grow rougher still. The whistle outside fades, but its echo lingers inside your chest. It feels less like a sound now, more like a drumbeat beneath your ribs, setting your pace, dictating each step. Bells mark the hours here, not clocks. The shift ahead will stretch endlessly, but it begins with that call, and you cannot ignore it. Near the far wall, a woman hums as she works, her voice nearly swallowed by the roar. The tune is faint but steady, threading through the chaos like a secret. Others seem to hear it too, though none acknowledge it. Perhaps it keeps her sane. Perhaps it keeps them all steady. Letters from the period suggest that many workers turned to humming, or whispered songs to hold on to rhythm when the machines threatened to overwhelm the mind. A man shouts, his voice ragged, pointing to a belt that has slipped from its wheel. Two others rush to help, forcing it back into place with practiced hands. The machine jerks, then resumes its thunder. They step back, faces streaked with oil, and return to their posts without a word. Incidents like this are routine. Records hint they could happen several times a day, but each time carries the threat of worse. You feel the floor tremble underfoot, a vibration constant as breath. Dust drifts from the rafters with every shudder, settling into your hair, your eyes, your throat. You cough, the sound lost in the storm around you. It will not be the last cough today. The overseer passes, eyes sharp beneath his bowler hat. He scans the floor as if counting heads, as if the sight of each bent back reassures him. His boots strike the boards with precise force, a rhythm meant to cut through the machinery. He does not stop, does not speak, but you feel the weight of his presence like a hand pressing between your shoulder blades. At the end of the row, a tall clock hangs on the wall, its pendulum swinging with stubborn persistence. Yet the hours it promises feel like illusions. Inside this hall, time is measured differently by whistles, by bells, by the endless turning of spindles. Outside, the city may race through dawn to dusk, but here only the machines decide when your body can rest. You adjust your stance, spread your feet for balance, and set your hands to work. Threads flicker before your eyes, demanding constant attention. Your fingers move almost on their own, muscle memory guiding where thought cannot. You settle into the rhythm, the beat of spindles and belts, the hiss of oil, the tremor under your feet. Somewhere above, a window bangs shut, rattled by wind. The sound vanishes into the roar, unnoticed by most, but you catch it, a reminder of the outside world, sky, air, light, so distant here. You swallow, throat dry, and focus again on the threads. The whistle's echo has faded entirely now, replaced by the deeper command of the machines themselves. They own the hours, the hands, the lungs of everyone within these walls. And you, 16 and strong, stand among them, one figure absorbed into the relentless rhythm of iron. The moment you cross deeper into the mill, the world narrows to noise and motion. The doors shut behind you with a heavy thud, muting the city outside. But what fills your ears instead is an endless roar. It is not one sound, but thousands layered together. Belts whirring, wheels clanking, spindles spinning so fast they blur, wood beams creaking under strain, voices calling but swallowed whole by iron. You draw in a breath and taste cotton dust before you even realize you've inhaled it. The air scratches your throat, gritty and sweet at once, a texture more than a flavor. The light is dim, filtering through windows so coated in grime they barely glow. Lamps hang low above the machines, their yellow halos smudged by smoke. Shadows cling to the corners, where oil cans sit, rags stained black piled on top. Everything here bears the same sheen of use, metal dulled by friction, wood polished smooth by constant contact, even the workers' faces marked with the shine of sweat before the morning has truly begun. You find your station, a row of spindles humming with restless energy. Your hands already know the motions. You reach for the thread, fingers rough from weeks of repetition, guiding the line as it trembles like a living thing. The machine pulls, demanding constant attention. A slip would mean a snarl of fibers, a jam perhaps worse. So you focus, eyes narrowing, the roar of the hall shrinking to the immediate task in front of you. Beside you, a man in his 40s works with swift precision, his movements sharp and sure. His sleeves are rolled high, revealing scars that trace along his arms, thin pale lines where thread once burned deep or metal bit too close. He notices your glance and gives a half smile, an acknowledgement without words. Then his eyes dart back to his own machine, attention unbroken. The overseer strides past again, boots hammering against the boards. He carries a notebook tucked under one arm, the pencil ready in his pocket. Records suggest many kept strict tallies of output, marking every length of thread, every finished spool. The threat is silent but constant. Production is watched as closely as the workers themselves. A sudden snap makes you flinch. A thread has broken on the spindle 2 places down. The woman working there reacts instantly, hands darting to catch the loose end before it tangles. She ties it back together in seconds, faster than thought, and resumes her pace. You realize she must have done this hundreds of times before. The motion burned into her muscles like breathing. Accounts from reformers describe this as one of the most punishing demands. The constant watch for breaks, the endless fixing of flaws. Even when successful, it wore the nerves thin. Overhead, belts slap as they whip across pulleys. Dust sifts down like snow, settling into your hair, coating your clothes. You wipe your brow, but your hand comes away grey with lint. The heat begins to build, the air heavy despite the early hour. The machines generate more than sound. They radiate warmth, their spinning bodies turning the hall into a furnace as the day advances. Near the end of the row, a group of men wrestle with a bale of raw cotton, slicing it open with knives. Fibers explode outward, white clouds that drift across the floor. They kick the cotton into piles, ready to be fed into carding machines. One man sneezes violently, doubling over, his face red. He waves off concern and straightens, but the sound lingers. Letters hint that many workers developed what they called brown lung, a choking cough that never truly left. Whether the man before you carries that fate, you cannot know, but you feel a shiver of recognition in your own chest as you cough again. The minutes blur. Machines do not grant pauses. Your body learns the rhythm, falling into a trance where motion replaces thought. Fingers pinch, guide, release. Eyes flicker to catch flaws. Shoulders ache from constant reach. Your ears ring, the roar seeping into every nerve. Sometimes you wonder if silence even exists anymore. If you stepped outside right now, would the world still sound like this, or has the machine carved its echo permanently into your skull? The man beside you shouts something, but his words vanish in the din. He gestures toward the far end of the hall. You follow his motion. There, a mechanic crouches by a spindle, tools flashing in lamplight. Sparks shower briefly as he hammers at a jammed piece of metal. The workers nearby step back, eyes wary. One accident could send shards flying. The overseer hovers close, his frown carved deep, but he does not interfere. At last the mechanic straightens, grease smeared across his cheeks, and the machine lurches back into motion. Relief ripples silently down the row, though no one stops moving their hands. Your back grows damp with sweat, shirt clinging to your skin. The boards underfoot are slick with oil in patches, sticky with lint in others. You shift your weight, careful not to slip. Somewhere glass shatters, a bulb perhaps, or a jar of oil. The sound flares sharp, then is swallowed whole, forgotten in seconds. Life inside the mill is a litany of such noises, sudden, startling, then erased by the larger roar. At times you glance toward the windows, searching for a slice of sky. A pigeon sits on the sill outside, feathers puffed against the cold. It pecks at the grime, perhaps hoping for crumbs, then flutters away. You envy its freedom for a moment, but the thought vanishes as your thread wavers. Focus returns. The spindle demands you again. You remember the whistle from earlier, its shriek still ghosting in your bones. That was the start of the day. Ahead waits the bell for midday, still distant, but inevitable. The machines measure time differently. They do not care for hours or meals. They know only motion, endless, tireless, until the overseer calls the halt. Still, amid the weight of noise and dust, a strange steadiness settles. You move as one with the machine, your breath matching the spin, your heart pulsing with the belts overhead. The hall is vast, the city outside vaster still, yet here in your small station you carve a place by sheer persistence. It is not triumph, not victory, but survival, a rhythm of endurance that keeps you standing when so much else could press you down. The overseer passes once more, pencil scratching against his pad. You do not look up this time. Your hands are busy, your eyes fixed. You work, you breathe, you endure. And as the machines roar on, swallowing every sound, you begin to wonder if perhaps they are not just tools of industry, but instruments of time itself, measuring lives in rotations and revolutions, winding threads not only into cloth, but into the fabric of every future day. You sense his presence before you see him. The overseer moves differently from everyone else. not in rhythm with the machines but against them, his pace deliberate, his boots landing with weight meant to be heard. In a hall where noise devours every sound, his steps still manage to cut through, felt as a pressure between your shoulders. He carries himself with authority stitched into every seam of his clothing. His bowler hat sits low, shadowing eyes that scan without pause. The waistcoat beneath his coat is pressed, the chain of a pocket watch glinting faintly as he walks. Unlike the workers, sweat does not stain his shirt, nor does dust cling to his sleeves. He seems immune to the air itself, as though the lint knows to avoid him. You lower your gaze, letting your hands keep their rhythm on the spindles. Around you, others do the same. The overseer does not demand eye contact. He demands productivity. His gaze sweeps rows like a lantern beam, catching every detail, threads that waver, fingers that hesitate, bodies that slacken even slightly. Each pause is a mark in the mental ledger he carries, ready to be transferred to paper later. The machines roar on, indifferent to his patrol, but for the workers, his presence shifts the air. Shoulders stiffen, breaths shorten. Even the hums and murmurs that sometimes slip past the noise fall silent when he draws near. He stops suddenly beside a man 2 rows over. The worker, older, his hair streaked with grey, is bent too close to his spindle, hands trembling as he fumbles with a brake. The overseer's voice slices through the hall, sharp, precise, unnaturally clear against the mechanical din. One word, but it carries weight. The man nods quickly, eyes lowered, fingers fumbling faster now. Whether the thread holds or not seems less important than the attempt. You feel your own pulse rise, though the reprimand was not for you. That is the overseer's true power. Even when his words are aimed elsewhere, they land in every chest, reminding each body that it too might be next. Records suggest that overseers were paid not just to monitor output, but to enforce discipline, their wages tied to the efficiency of those under their watch. Some accounts hint they were resented almost as much as the machines themselves, a human face placed on the grinding demand for more. Letters from workers describe them as both necessary and cruel, guardians of order in a world where chaos could halt profit for even a moment. The overseer continues down the row. His eyes flick briefly to you. You keep your hands steady, your focus unbroken, though you feel the heat rise in your cheeks. The glance lasts no more than a heartbeat, but relief still washes over you when it passes. At the far wall, he pauses near a group of women tending to a line of spindles. One whispers something to another, lips barely moving. The overseer clears his throat, a sound deep and deliberate, and the whisper vanishes like smoke. The women bow their heads lower, their hands moving with renewed precision. You wonder what thought had passed between them. Something small, perhaps a joke, perhaps a shared worry, but it is gone now, pressed silent under his shadow. You notice how carefully he carries his notebook. Though it is not yet open, its very presence is threat enough. Workers know that once names or numbers are written down, they rarely favour those recorded. Fines may follow, or deductions, or warnings that are never spoken aloud, but felt all the same when pay envelopes come lighter than expected. The machines falter briefly near the centre of the hall. A belt slips, squealing as it spins out of place. Workers rush to fix it, their hands moving quickly, their faces tight with urgency. The overseer watches, arms folded. He does not help, does not speak, simply waits. When the belt is forced back into alignment and the roar resumes, he nods once, makes a mark in his notebook, and walks on. You think about how every worker here knows their survival depends not only on their own hands, but on the patience of this single man. He is not the owner, not the man who truly profits, but in this space he carries their authority. To challenge him would be to risk more than wages. Stories drift through the hall of men blacklisted for defiance, their names passed quietly from mill to mill, doors closing to them forever. Whether all those tales are true or not, no one seems eager to test them. And yet, even under his gaze, Life resists silence. A woman adjusts the ribbon in her hair, stubbornly neat despite the dust. A man hums so faintly it could be mistaken for breathing. A worker across from you slips a crumb of bread into his mouth when he thinks no one sees. Small rebellions, hidden in plain sight, moments of self in a world that tries to grind it away. The overseer moves toward the stairwell, his steps receding. The pressure in the room eases slightly. Shoulders drop, breaths lengthen. The machines roar as always, but without him the sound feels less heavy, less like judgment. You realize how much of the weight you carried was not from the air or the dust, but from his steady gaze. Still, he will return. He always does. His watch will mark the hours. His notebook the lapses. His eyes the weaknesses. The knowledge lingers, keeping your movements sharp, your attention constant. You glance toward the tall clock again. Only minutes have passed, though it feels like hours. The overseer's shadow has stretched time, slowing it, stretching it thin like thread pulled taut. You focus on your work once more, knowing he could appear again at any moment. And as the machines thunder on, you realize the overseer is not simply a man, he is part of the rhythm itself, another instrument in the endless orchestra of the mill, his gaze striking chords of fear and order as surely as belts strike wheels. Your fingers ache, though the day has barely begun. They twitch and flex as if they carry a memory of their own, rehearsed motions repeated countless times. The machines demand constant touch, and in return they punish every slip. You know this in your bones, and you know it from the scars that trace along the knuckles of those around you. The phrase hands of the machine is more than metaphor here. Human flesh is drawn into partnership with iron. The spindles turn, the belts whip, the gears grind, and your hands must keep pace. You lean in, guiding threads that are too fine for eyes alone, feeling them as much as seeing them. They hum against your skin, vibrating with hidden energy. The roar of the hall presses around you, relentless. You focus on your task, yet your attention drifts to the workers nearby. To your left, a broad-shouldered man stoops low, his hands darting into a nest of thread to catch a break before it spreads. He moves with grace born of long experience, but even grace cannot defy chance. The spindle snaps back and his finger scrapes against the metal edge. He jerks away, muttering under his breath. A thin line of red appears, mingling almost invisibly with the cotton dust. He wraps the finger in a rag, ties it quick, and returns to his station. There is no pause, no luxury for tending wounds. You swallow hard. It is a reminder, the machines never forgive hesitation. They take what they wish. Skin, blood, sometimes more. Records from reformers of the time noted that hundreds of accidents occurred yearly in mills like this, most of them with adults who had worked for years and still found themselves caught unaware. The statistics feel abstract until you see the fresh stain on a rag beside you. The floor shakes as a massive loom clatters nearby. Its wooden frame rattles with each pass, shuttles flying back and forth so fast they blur. A man feeds it cloth, guiding with his palms. His eyes are steady, but his lips are pressed tight, as though he clenches fear between his teeth. You catch sight of scars up his forearm, jagged pale ridges where flesh once met machine. You look away, but the image clings. Above you, the belts flick like whips, black leather flashing under lamplight. They spin faster than thought, hissing with speed. Dust drifts down, catching in your eyelashes. You blink, rub your eyes, and return your focus. A thread breaks, and your hands snap forward automatically, knotting, twisting, feeding the spindle again. Your body moves before your mind fully registers it. You wonder how many more thousands of times you will repeat this same repair before the week is over. The overseer has stepped out, but you feel his ghost linger. Every worker still moves with extra caution, knowing the ledger in his notebook is never far. You can almost hear the scratch of his pencil, even in his absence. Across the hall, a sharp shout rises. A man has snagged his sleeve on a spindle. The cloth tears free, the sleeve ripped open to the shoulder. He stumbles back, shaken but whole. For a heartbeat, the whole falters, the rhythm of motion breaking. Then the machines claim the sound, drowning it out. The man laughs nervously, shakes his head, and returns to his place. Around him, others avoid his gaze. Relief is private here. No one celebrates a narrow escape aloud. A bell clangs faintly from the yard, marking the half-hour. It sounds distant, almost unreal, against the thunder inside. Yet it reminds you that time does move. However slowly, you flex your hands, knuckles stiff. Already your skin feels raw from the endless brushing of thread. You think of water, of rest, but both remain far ahead. The heat rises steadily. Sweat gathers at your temples, trickling down the side of your face. You wipe it away, only for dust to cling to the damp skin. The taste is bitter, the air thick. Some workers tie cloths around their mouths, but most endure without. Records suggest masks were rare, considered unnecessary expense. Letters hint that some owners even claimed dust was harmless, though lungs told another story. Beside you, the man with the bandaged finger pauses just long enough to tuck a small charm back into his pocket. A coin drilled with a hole, strung on a thin cord, perhaps a token from home, perhaps a superstition. Many held such objects, little defences against forces larger than themselves. He catches your glance and shrugs, eyes tired but kind, before returning to his task. The rhythm begins to consume you again. Hands, threads, knots, spindles. The machine dictates, and you follow. Yet beneath the surface, tension coils. You know each moment carries risk, that every motion could veer toward harm. It is a dance, one in which the machine always leads. Then it happens. A cry of pain sharp enough to cut through the roar. You look up instinctively. At the far row, a worker has pulled back his hand too late. The spindle caught, ripping flesh. He staggers, clutching his palm, crimson staining his shirt front. Others rush to steady him, guiding him toward the wall. His face is pale, eyes wide, lips pressed tight to hold back a groan. The machines do not stop. They keep spinning, indifferent. The sound of his injury is swallowed, forgotten almost instantly, as though the hall refuses to acknowledge it. Still, the image burns in your mind. The sharp edge of danger feels closer now. Pressing against your own skin, you return to your task, fingers trembling. But the rhythm soon takes hold again. There is no choice. The machines allow no long pauses. Time crawls. Each breath tastes of dust and grease. Each motion feels heavier. And yet you endure. The hands of the machine demand sacrifice. But they also give strange power. You realize your own skill now, how your fingers know what to do, how your reflexes are sharpened. You can move in ways that would have astonished you months ago. You hate it, and yet you respect it. This knowledge etched into flesh. Another bell rings, an hour gone, many more ahead. You steady your hands, ignore the ache, and press forward one motion after another. The machines roar on, relentless, and you, hands raw, shoulders aching, stand firm amid their fury, one small figure in an endless sea of labour, caught between fear and endurance, between danger and survival. The bell sounds, and for a moment you almost don't believe it. The noise of the machines has become so absolute, so constant, that any new sound feels like an intrusion. Yet there it is, again, a hollow clang from the yard, cutting faintly through the roar. Noon. Your shoulders slump before you even realize you've moved. Fingers loosen their grip, lungs drag in a deeper breath, and a wave of relief runs through the row. The machines begin to wind down, one after another, the belts slowing, the spindles spinning to stillness. The sound does not disappear entirely, the clatter of gears echoes in your skull long after, but the quiet that follows feels immense. It is not silence, but to you it might as well be. Workers step back from their stations, rubbing wrists, rolling stiff shoulders, flexing sore fingers. Some cough hard, bent double as dust finally has space to leave their lungs. Others simply lean against the frames, eyes closed for a few precious seconds. You follow the flow toward the yard. Boots scuff the boards, doors creak open, and suddenly you are back under the weak daylight. The sun sits high, though pale behind a haze of smoke. The air outside is no cleaner, but it tastes fresher after the furnace inside. People spread across the yard, finding ledges, steps, or crates to sit on. Lunch pails clang open, tin lids clattering. The smell of food fills the air. Not lavish meals, but simple staples, hunks of bread, cold potatoes, onions, bits of cheese wrapped in paper. Someone pours tea from a thermos, steam curling up and catching the light. You open your own small parcel. 2 slices of rye bread, a smear of butter already melted into the crust, and a single hard-boiled egg. It is not much, but hunger sharpens the taste. You bite, and the bread crumbles dry against your tongue, washed down only by a swallow of lukewarm water from a dented flask. Still, in this moment, it feels like relief. A man beside you unwraps his lunch more slowly. Inside is salted herring, the smell sharp, drifting across the yard. Some wrinkle their noses, others smile at the familiarity. He laughs softly, explaining in accented English that it reminds him of home. You nod, chewing your bread, tasting not fish but his memory all the same. Around you, conversations begin to bubble. Voices rise above the coughs, carrying fragments of languages. Polish, Italian, Yiddish, Irish lilt, German consonants hard and clear. Words cross, overlap, stumble into English, then retreat again. Hands gesture when tongues fail. Laughter erupts here and there, brief sparks in the heavy air. Someone pulls a newspaper from his coat, its edges smudged with oil. He reads aloud headlines. Political debates in Washington. A new play opening uptown. A story about an automobile accident that left onlookers stunned. Opinions fly in every direction. Some scoff, others nod, a few argue heatedly until the reader moves on. Letters from reformers suggest that lunch breaks like these were sometimes the only time workers could exchange ideas freely. Some used them to plan strikes, others to share news of home or dreams of better jobs. Records contradict how much freedom was truly tolerated. Some mills allowed a half hour, others only 15 minutes, but all agree the time was never enough. You peel your eggs slowly, savouring the small ritual. The shell cracks under your thumb, fragments falling onto the dusty ground. You sprinkle a pinch of salt from a folded scrap of paper and eat it in 2 bites. It is gone too soon, but your stomach quiets for the moment. Across the yard, a woman laughs loudly, startling those nearby. She holds up a bright red apple, polished against her sleeve. She takes a bite, juice shining on her chin, and for a heartbeat the yard feels lighter. The overseer, standing by the doorway, glances over but says nothing. Even he seems to grant this brief reprieve. The man with the bandaged hand sits a few steps away, unwrapping his bread with careful fingers. He winces as he flexes, but his jaw is set, determined. He catches your eye, raises his crust of bread slightly in a silent toast. You raise your own back, a fleeting moment of camaraderie. Someone starts humming, a tune low and familiar. Others join in, quietly at first, then louder. The melody is unsteady, shifting as different voices carry it in their own accents, but together it holds. It threads through the yard like a reminder that life exists outside the machines, if only for a little while. The sun slips behind a cloud, shadows deepening. You tilt your head back, feeling the weak warmth on your face. The sky seems impossibly distant, unreachable, yet you cling to its pale light. For these minutes, you are not only hands, not only labour, you are a body breathing, a voice humming, a person alive. But the reprieve is fragile. The overseer checks his watch. The chain glints as he lifts it. His eyes narrowing slightly. He clears his throat, not loudly but enough. Conversations taper. Laughter fades. The humming stutters to silence. You feel the shift as though the air itself tenses. Workers begin to gather their things. Crumbs brushed from coats, paper folded, flasks capped, tin pails close with metallic snaps. Boots scrape against the stone as people rise, shoulders settling into familiar slumps. You take your last swallow of water, shake the flask to hear the hollow echo, and tuck it away. Hunger is not gone, but it is dulled, pressed down beneath duty. Your legs protest as you push yourself upright, knees stiff, but there is no choice. The overseer does not speak. He only turns toward the door, and the crowd follows. The break is over. Its memory already feels like a dream slipping away. You step back into the mill, and the roar greets you instantly. Belts whip, gears grind, spindles spin back to life. The air thickens, swallowing the faint taste of bread, the brief touch of sun. Noon is behind you, and the afternoon stretches long ahead. For a moment you think of the apple, its red skin shining in the woman's hand. The image lingers, small and bright against the grey dust. Then the machines demand your hands again, and the memory dissolves into motion. The roar swallows you whole again, as the machines lurch back to life. The moment of rest dissolves into vibration and dust, into the steady whip of belts above and the blur of spindles below. Your hands resume their work, steady but slower now, weighted by the food in your stomach. Even a crust of bread becomes a burden when the machines demand every ounce of your attention. You know accidents lurk here, like shadows. They are not rare, not shocking. They are part of the rhythm. The machines ask for speed, and speed leaves little room for care. Each worker tells themselves it won't be today, not them, not this time. But the hall has a way of reminding you how thin that promise truly is. The first comes quickly. A shout, sharp enough to cut the roar. You glance up in time to see a man 2 rows over pull his hand back, blood dripping from his palm. The thread had tangled, snapping free, and slicing deep into the soft flesh between his thumb and forefinger. He swears, teeth gritted, and someone tosses him a rag already stained from another day. He wraps it tight, shakes his head once, and because the machine will not wait, he leans back in. The red mark on the floor is the only trace left, quickly coated by drifting cotton dust. You force your eyes down, back to your own spindle, yet your ears remain sharp, attuned to every shout, every scrape, every sudden break in the rhythm. The second is worse. Near the looms, a man's sleeve catches. You hear the rip before you see it, a tearing sound swallowed almost instantly by the thunder of wood and iron. He jerks back, but too late. The fabric drags his arm close, pulling skin against spinning metal. His cry is short, almost strangled. By the time others rush forward, his arm bears a jagged gash, skin torn raw. He stumbles, clutching it to his chest, face pale with shock. The overseer appears as if summoned. His eyes scan the scene, sharp, assessing, but he does not stop the machines. He never does. The injured man is guided toward the wall, blood trailing faintly on the boards. Another worker steps into his place before the loom can stall. The rhythm of production continues, swallowing the incident like a stone sinking into water. Records from the time note how owners insisted machines must never stop, not for repairs, not for injuries. Accounts contradict whether this rule was written or simply understood, but in practice the result was the same. Flesh was expendable. Motion was not. You knot a thread, hands trembling despite yourself. Every accident feels like a warning, though you tell yourself to focus. Fear does not stop the machine. Only hands do. Dust thickens as the afternoon stretches on. The air tastes like metal, like salt, like sweat. You cough, and the man beside you coughs too, a duet that vanishes into the roar. His bandaged finger leaks faint red through the cloth, but he does not stop. Another cry rises, this time from the carding machines near the far wall. A mechanic had leaned too close, guiding fibres when a belt whipped loose. It snapped against his shoulder, knocking him back with brutal force. He lands hard, breath leaving his lungs in a gasp you can almost feel across the room. Workers rush, hauling him to his feet. His face is grey, his body trembling, but he nods quickly, insisting he's fine. Pride demands denial, even as pain bends his posture. He will return tomorrow, you know. They always do, unless they cannot walk at all. You notice the way others glance at the overseer after each incident. He does not flinch, does not react. His notebook remains closed this time, perhaps because accidents are too common to record, or perhaps because writing them down would acknowledge the risk in ways the owners do not wish. A sudden silence falls over one section of the hall. A loom jams, its shuttle stuck mid-flight. Workers freeze, waiting for the mechanic. For a breathless moment, it is as though time itself halts. Then tools clang, the machine jolts, and the roar resumes. The silence is forgotten instantly, buried under motion. The smell of oil grows stronger, sharp enough to sting your nose. A worker nearby wipes sweat from his forehead, leaving a black streak across his skin. He mutters something in Polish, a curse perhaps, and spits onto the floor. The spit lands dark, mixing with dust and grease, vanishing almost immediately. You think of how many scars must be hidden beneath the sleeves and collars around you, how many hands bear burns, how many arms bear cuts, how many lungs wheeze each night from air too thick to cleanse. Letters from survivors hint at missing fingers, broken ribs, even crushed limbs. Some were compensated, most were not. Whether truth or rumour, you believe it easily here. Then comes the worst yet. A man at the far row leans too deep, guiding thread with the edge of his palm. The spindle snatches faster than he anticipates. In an instant his hand is pulled in. He wrenches back, but skin and flesh tear with it. His scream rips through the hall, louder than the machines for a heartbeat. Blood spatters against the spindle, threads staining red as they spin on. Workers leap to his side, dragging him back. His hand is ruined, the palm shredded, fingers bent at unnatural angles. He collapses against the wall, moaning, while someone presses cloth hard against the wound. The overseer strides over, gaze hard, lips thin. For a moment, you think he will call for the machines to stop. But no, the looms continue. Spindles spin, belts whip. The overseer merely waves to two men, who half carry, half drag the injured worker toward the door. His cries fade as the door shuts behind them. The machines resume their dominance. Your stomach churns. You grip your thread tighter, breath shallow. The accident burns in your vision, impossible to erase. And yet, within minutes, the hall returns to rhythm. Hands move, spindles turn, cloth grows by the yard. Life here is measured not in tragedies but in production. Still, a residue clings. Shoulders hunch lower, eyes dart more often toward the overseer. Movements stiffen with caution. Even laughter, that rare intruder, vanishes entirely. You realize the machines do not simply make fabric. They make scars. They weave them into every worker's skin, invisible until you look closely, and they will keep weaving, day after day, until the whistle grants release. You rub your palms, flex your fingers, steady your breath. Fear remains, but so does necessity. You return to your task, joining the rhythm once more. The roar swallows everything. The cries, the blood, the memory itself. The accidents will continue, you know. Perhaps not to you today, but to someone somewhere in the hall. It is only a matter of time. And so you work, hands trembling but obedient, a thread in the vast tapestry of survival the mill demands. The overseer returns as if summoned by the blood still drying on the boards. His boots strike a steady rhythm, deliberate, each step cutting through the mechanical thunder. Though the roar of the mill drowns human voices, you always know when he is near. It is not sound alone, but weight. A gravity that bends every back lower, presses every pair of eyes down toward the spinning threads. He carries his notebook today, pages slightly curled from the damp air. The pencil sits ready in his gloved hand, tapping once against the cover as though eager to carve judgment into paper. His gaze sweeps the room not like a glance, but like a blade, slicing from worker to worker, leaving an invisible mark on each he lingers upon. You bow your head, focusing on your spindle. Your fingers tremble slightly, though you will them steady. The memory of the injured man lingers in the corner of your eye. The overseer noticed too. He always does, but his reaction was no more than a twitch of the jaw, a faint narrowing of his gaze. Now he moves among you, silent, watchful, the machine's will made flesh. He stops near a woman whose hair has slipped loose from its knot. A strand dangles dangerously close to the spindle. The overseer clears his throat, a sharp bark meant to pierce the raw. She startles, grabs the loose strand, tucks it away and bows her head. His pencil scratches once, quick and final. He moves on. You wonder what that mark means. A warning? A deduction? No one ever knows for certain, but the consequences arrive quietly in pay envelopes or whispered threats of dismissal. Letters from the period suggest that fines for even small infractions were common, arriving late, wasting thread, breaking concentration for a moment too long. Records disagree on how harshly they were enforced, but every worker here acts as though a single stroke of the pencil could end their fragile place in the mill. The overseer pauses near you. His eyes scan your hands, your shoulders, your posture. He watches longer than you expect. You feel sweat bead on your brow, your fingers tightening around the thread. For a heartbeat, the world narrows to his gaze alone. Then, just as suddenly, he turns, his boots resuming their march. Relief floods your chest, though you do not dare exhale too loudly. Behind him, murmurs rise briefly. A man coughs. Another mutters in a foreign tongue too soft to catch. The overseer stops instantly, head tilting. The murmurs die. Silence, or as close to silence as possible within this roaring hall, reclaims the space. His pencil scratches again. Somewhere, another mark has been made. You sense how carefully everyone moves in his presence. A woman wiping sweat from her brow uses the back of her hand instead of pausing to find a cloth. A man whose shoelaces loosened waits until the overseer passes before daring to kneel. Even the mechanic repairing a belt straightens his back more often than usual, as though posture alone might shield him from judgment. The power lies not only in what he does, but in what he might do. Fear is constant because it is undefined. You know what the machines demand. They take flesh when you falter, but the overseer's punishments are less predictable, more insidious. Some workers vanish after a single dismissal, never seen on this floor again. Others endure weeks of fines, their pay shrinking until survival itself trembles. You think of your neighbour at the boarding house, who once whispered that overseers were chosen for their coldness, that owners sought men who could strip away pity. Perhaps it is rumour, perhaps truth, but watching him now you believe it easily. His face holds no expression beyond calculation, no warmth beyond the light that glints off his pocket watch chain. The machines thunder on, and still he walks. At intervals he lifts his watch, glances at its face and snaps it shut. Time belongs to him as much as to the belts and spindles. When he slows his pace, the room feels it, bodies tensing as though bracing for reprimand. When he quickens, workers match the rhythm without thinking. He is the conductor of this grim orchestra, and fear is the music that keeps you all in tune. Near the far wall, he stops at a man who has paused to flex his sore wrist. The overseer says nothing at first, only watches until the man's hand drops back to the spindle. Then a single word: lazy. It cuts like a blade, sharp and final. The man's jaw tightens, but he does not respond. His fingers redouble their speed, trembling from haste. The overseer scribbles another note and moves on. You feel your throat tighten. That could have been you, could still be you. The threat is not distant. It is as close as the next slip of thread. And yet, beneath the weight of his presence, small acts of defiance endure. You notice a worker slipping a crust of bread to a friend, passing it behind the shield of the machines. Another hums faintly, so low it blends with the spinning spindles, a sound hidden in the roar. These moments are fragile, nearly invisible, but they remind you that not all humanity has been stripped away. The overseer circles once more, his boots striking the boards in steady tempo. At last he heads toward the stairwell, notebook tucked beneath his arm. His presence fades, though the memory lingers. The room exhales collectively, shoulders sagging, eyes lifting briefly from the relentless work. You glance at the tall clock again. The hands crawl forward, the afternoon stretching endlessly ahead. Each hour feels longer than the last, measured not in minutes, but in glances from the overseer, in pencil marks you may never see but will surely feel. The machines roar on, dust thickens, sweat drips, and you, like everyone else, work under his shadow, knowing he will return, always to remind you that the eyes of the mill never truly close. The roar of the mill never softens, but inside it you begin to notice other sounds, threads of human life woven through iron. At first they are fragments, half-heard syllables, stray consonants carried on breath. But soon you realize the whole itself is a chorus, a mingling of tongues from a dozen places stitched together by necessity. To your left, two men trade words in Polish. The sounds thick and heavy, consonants grinding like stone. Their gestures sharpen the meaning. Hands slicing through air, eyebrows lifted, shoulders shrugging. They argue about the speed of the spindle, about who must adjust the threads when they snap. You cannot catch the words, but the tone is unmistakable. Frustration bound with fatigue. Ahead of you, a woman mutters in Italian, her voice low and melodic even as she curses at a knot of tangled thread. She spits the word like a stone, then smooths her face and resumes her work. Another worker nearby responds in broken Italian, laughter flashing between them. For a heartbeat, the mill feels lighter. To your right, Yiddish flows like water, quick syllables bouncing, phrases tumbling into each other with rhythm and urgency. Two men share a joke, their shoulders shaking. You catch the word Amerique repeated, perhaps mockery, perhaps hope, perhaps both. Their laughter carries until the overseer's shadow drifts near, and then it vanishes like smoke. The air thickens with cotton dust, but the voices cut through, weaving a tapestry richer than the fabric on the spindles. You realize you are part of something larger than labor alone, a mosaic of homes carried here in tongues, of nations condensed into one hall. Records suggest that by 1910, New York's Lower East Side alone was home to hundreds of thousands of immigrants, each block a babel of languages. Letters contradict whether this mix was harmony or chaos. Some called it a blessing, others a curse, but here, amid sweat and noise, it is survival. A man brushes against you, mutters an apology in Irish English. His vowels stretched, softened. His accent clings to him like his coat, unmistakable even after years in this city. He grins briefly, eyes tired but kind, then returns to his station. The mechanic passes, cursing under his breath in German as a belt squeals overhead. His hammer clangs against the frame, sparks scattering. He spits again, wipes his brow, and shouts orders in English. The words stumble, clipped by his accent, but his meaning is clear enough. Workers shift, machines resume, the roar swallows the sound. You think of how many stories are carried in these voices. Each accent is a trail of ships, of train rides, of dusty villages left behind. Each language is a reminder of hunger, of hope, of the dream of something better. Yet here all dreams bend to the same rhythm of iron. During the briefest pauses, you catch snatches of song. A Slavic lullaby hummed by a woman at the far row, her voice trembling above the spindle's hiss. An Irish ballad whistled faintly, almost lost to the belts. Even fragments of prayers slip out. Catholic, Jewish, Orthodox, all whispered under breath, more reflex than ritual. You remember what reformers wrote, that immigrant workers often relied on gestures more than words. Records describe how a single motion, a nod, a wave, a flick of the wrist, could bridge gulfs of language when speed mattered more than speech. You see it here, a woman signaling for scissors with her hand, a man pointing to his mouth to ask for a sip of water. Simple, immediate, understood. And yet, misunderstandings are common. Near the looms, two men bark at each other, their words clashing incomprehensibly. The overseer glances their way, and instantly both fall silent, their argument buried under the machine's demand. The language barrier can be forgiven by fellow workers, but not by those who measure output in spools, not syllables. You glance at your own hands, moving automatically now. Your voice is rarely raised here, your English still halting in places, your accent marking you as other, but you understand enough. The rhythm of work itself is its own language, one everyone must learn: spindle, knot, thread, repeat. In that rhythm, you are fluent. The afternoon drags on. Dust coats your tongue, your throat, your lungs. You cough, and the man beside you coughs too. As if in echo, he mutters something in his native tongue. Perhaps a curse, perhaps only a complaint. You smile faintly, though he does not see. Then comes a moment that sears itself into memory. A thread snaps violently, lashing against a woman's hand. She gasps, instinctively crying out in Greek. The word is foreign, unfamiliar, but the pain is universal. Another worker rushes to help, guiding her fingers back into place, offering a cloth. No translation is needed. The language of blood requires none. For a breath, solidarity overwhelms difference. People from half a dozen countries lean closer, offering rags, water, advice in words she may not understand, but in gestures she surely does. The overseer pauses, watching, but writes nothing. Perhaps even he knows there is no ledger precise enough to measure such moments. The woman nods, bandages her hand with trembling fingers, and returns to her station. Her lips still whisper in Greek, words that might be prayer, might be fury, might be both. The machines thunder on, indifferent to the symphony around them, yet you hear the voices more clearly now, not as noise but as proof of survival. Each syllable is a refusal to vanish, each accent a reminder that no machine can grind identity into dust completely. As the hour deepens, you wonder how many languages the city holds beyond these walls. On the streets, in the markets, in the boarding houses, words from across the world must mix until even silence feels foreign. Historians debate whether this melting of tongues created unity or tension. Standing here, you feel both, the friction of difference and the bond of shared endurance. Your throat aches from dust, but you whisper a word anyway, just one, a greeting in your own language, soft, nearly swallowed by the roar. The man beside you glances over, surprise flickering across his face. Then he nods, replying in kind. The exchange is brief, almost invisible, but it roots you. In this hall of iron and dust, you are not alone. The overseer's boots strike in the distance, and voices dim, but you know they will rise again, louder when he passes. They always do. The machines may own your hands, but voices belong to you still. And though every word is fragile, carried on dust-choked breath, together they weave a song no ledger can silence. The hours blur into one another. Time no longer feels like a steady line, but a weight pressing down on your shoulders, bending your spine, dragging at your eyelids. The machines roar, and your body answers, though each movement grows slower, heavier, more reluctant. Your fingers ache from tying knots. The skin along your palms is rubbed raw, small cuts smarting each time the thread brushes over them. Shoulders burn from hours of leaning, wrists throb from endless flicks and twists. At 16 you should feel youth in your limbs, but the mill teaches you otherwise. Here bodies age faster than calendars. The light through the windows has shifted, though you hardly notice at first. Morning's weak glow has slid across the grimy panes, giving way to afternoon's dull grey. Dust still floats, visible when caught in the dim lamps overhead, glimmering briefly before vanishing again into haze. You catch yourself swaying. Your knees buckle slightly, and you jolt awake, heart thudding with fear. Sleep is the greatest enemy here, even greater than broken thread. You cannot close your eyes, not even for a second. Records suggest overseers fined or even dismissed workers who nodded off. Some letters hint at worse, that drowsy men were shaken awake by the sting of a stick. Whether or not every tale is true, the fear is enough to keep you standing. The rhythm of exhaustion is everywhere. The man beside you yawns, his jaw cracking wide, eyes glazed. He blinks hard, shakes his head and grips the spindle tighter as if to anchor himself. A woman across the row rubs her temples, the motion quick and furtive, as though even that pause might invite reprimand. You see her lips move silently, perhaps counting, perhaps praying, perhaps simply keeping herself awake with the sound of her own voice. Your stomach growls, the brief lunch already burned away by the machine's demand. Hunger returns swiftly, gnawing at your belly with sharp insistence. You swallow, dry and heavy, and force your eyes to the thread again. The heat inside the hall intensifies. Sweat runs down your back, soaking your shirt, stinging the shallow cuts on your hands. The air feels thick, as though each breath must be wrestled from the dust. You cough again, chest rattling, and the sound is mirrored nearby. The cough is a constant here, a chorus of weary lungs trying to clear themselves, never fully succeeding. You think of your boarding house room, of the hard mattress and the thin blanket waiting at the end of the day. The thought brings no comfort, only another weight, another reminder of how short the night will feel when it finally comes. But even that faint hope is enough to keep your hands moving, fingers tying knots as if in sleep. The man with the bandaged hand leans briefly against his spindle, his body sagging. You glance at him, worried he might collapse, but he straightens quickly, jaw set. He meets your eye for a moment, his gaze weary but steady. You both know the truth. If one falls, the machine does not stop, someone else will step in. Survival means refusing to fall. The overseer's steps echo distantly. Even when he is not near, the memory of his presence keeps you upright. You blink hard, force your eyes wide, focus on the thin thread trembling before you. It demands everything. Records note that workers often describe the late afternoon as the hardest stretch, the body half spent, the mind numbed by repetition, yet the hours still endless ahead. Some accounts contradict whether evening shifts were worse. Those who worked through the night claimed fatigue became so deep it blurred into madness. You think of this and shudder. Today at least you face only daylight. Your legs grow heavy. Calves tremble with each shift of weight. You roll your ankles subtly, trying to keep blood flowing, though your boots pinch tight. The floor beneath you vibrates constantly, shaking fatigue deeper into bone. You wonder if, even in sleep, your body will keep trembling, as though it can never leave the mill behind. The smell of sweat is sharp now, mixing with grease and cotton. It clings to your clothes, your hair, even your skin. You wipe your face with your sleeve, but it only smears grime across your cheek. Still, the gesture comforts, proof that you are still awake, still moving. At moments your mind drifts. You see flashes not of the hall but of streets outside, of markets crowded with colour, of parks where children chase each other freely. You imagine sunlight on grass, air clear enough to breathe without effort. These images slip in like dreams, fleeting and fragile, and vanish as quickly as they come when a thread breaks or the overseer's boots strike near. A shout rises suddenly, sharp, urgent. A worker 2 rows down has dropped his spool. It clatters against the boards, bouncing into the path of another machine. Hands dart, snatching it back just in time. The overseer appears, scowls, and makes a note. The worker bows his head, shoulders hunched with shame. You feel a pulse of sympathy. You know how easily fatigue causes mistakes, how a single slip can bring punishment. You rub your eyes, press your palms against your face for a second too long. The spindle pulls hard, thread slipping. You gasp, jerk your hands back into motion, knotting quickly before the overseer notices. Your heart pounds, sweat slick in your palms. A mistake so small, yet it could have cost you dearly. Still, you endure. That is the lesson the mill teaches above all else. Not speed, not skill, but endurance. To keep moving when your body begs to stop. To stand when your legs falter. To stay awake when every muscle longs for rest. You glance once more at the tall clock on the far wall. The hands creep forward, but the distance to evening still feels immense. You sigh almost silently and return to your task. The machines thunder on, the hall trembling, dust thickening, and you, weary beyond your years, remain at your station, eyes half closed, body aching, hands still moving. The whistle sounds again, long and metallic, announcing the end of the shift. It echoes through the mill like a blade slicing air, cutting the thread of labour. For a moment silence almost seems possible, but as the machines slow, their roar softening to a groan, you realise the sound will never leave your ears. It lingers inside your skull, a phantom hum, as though the spindles have woven themselves into your very blood. You stretch your back, stiff and aching, fingers uncurl reluctantly. Cramped from hours of endless repetition, the air in the hall feels heavier now, thick with the sweat of 100 bodies and the haze of dust disturbed by motion. You cough hard, the sound tearing at your throat, and join the tide of workers pushing toward the doors. Boots scuff, shoulders bump, voices rise in a low murmur. Outside, the sky has shifted. The pale light of morning is gone. In its place, late afternoon casts long shadows across the cobblestones. Smoke drifts from chimneys, staining the horizon in grey. The air is no cleaner, but it tastes freer, open after the suffocation of the mill. You breathe deeply, though every breath carries grit. The street is alive with vendors. Carts line the curb, their wheels muddy, their handles worn smooth by years of pulling. Men and women call out, voices urgent, competing for attention. The smell is overwhelming, sweet, savoury, pungent. It coils through the air, winding into your empty stomach, twisting hunger sharp and immediate. A man roasts chestnuts over glowing coals, the shells popping, smoke curling skyward. The scent is rich, earthy, irresistible. He scoops a handful into a paper cone, passes it to a woman who presses coins into his palm. She blows on them, steam rising, and bites, her eyes closing in brief bliss. You watch, lips parted, the memory of your dry bread and hard egg from noon already fading. Next to him, a woman sells pickles from a wooden barrel. The brine splashes as she spears one with tongs, placing it into a boy's hand. He crunches loudly, juice dripping down his chin, laughter bubbling up as his mother scolds. The sharp, sour scent drifts toward you, and your mouth waters. Further along, a cart sizzles with sausages, grease popping, flames licking the edges of the pan. The vendor flips them quickly, each turn releasing another burst of aroma, garlic, pepper, meat. A man in a worn cap buys one, wrapping it in bread. He bites deep, grease running down his wrist, and sighs. You swallow hard, the sound lost in the crowd. Another cart offers candied nuts, sugar caramelizing until it hardens into a sweet shell. The vendor shakes the pan, the nuts clattering like coins. Children gather, their eyes wide, coins clutched in dirty hands. Their laughter rises above the street noise, bright, unburdened, though you know their families work as hard as yours. The street is a gauntlet of temptation. Every scent claws at your hunger. Every sight sharpens your craving. Yet your pockets are nearly empty. The day's wages, small, hard-earned, must stretch to rent, to coal, to the barest necessities. A penny spent here, is a penny gone from survival. Still, your body aches for more than survival. A group of workers pause at a coffee stall. The vendor pours steaming liquid into tin cups, the bitter scent filling the air. Some stir in sugar, others drink it black, grimacing at the bite. Coffee is luxury and necessity at once, fuel for weary bodies. Records suggest it was among the most common indulgences, even for those with little, though accounts disagree whether it truly eased fatigue or only masked it. You watch the steam rise, feel it tug at your lungs and turn away. The man with the bandaged hand walks beside you, his steps uneven but steady. He nods toward the chestnut cart, murmurs something about warmth. His eyes linger on the paper cones, but he shakes his head, jaw tightening, and keeps walking. You feel the same pull, the longing, the denial. Hunger must bend to necessity. Still, you allow yourself to linger at one stall. A baker sells rolls, their crusts golden, their insides soft. The smell is intoxicating, rich with yeast and flour. You ask the price, though you already know. 2 cents, more than you can spare. You thank him quietly, step back and let the line swallow you. Voices rise all around, English mixed with accents, German clipped and precise, Italian flowing and musical, Yiddish sharp and quick. Vendors shout their wares in every tongue. Customers haggle, argue, laugh. The street is chaos and life, louder even than the mill, though with a different energy. Here, voices are not swallowed by machines, but amplified by hunger and desire. A man with a tray of pretzels weaves through the crowd, the twists stacked high, sprinkled with coarse salt. He calls out in a sing-song voice, the word pretzel stretched into melody. Children follow, tugging at their mothers' skirts. Coins change hands. The crunch of bread echoes in your ears, cruel in its nearness. You imagine the taste of each thing you pass, the smoky chestnuts, the sour pickles, the greasy sausages, the sweet nuts, the bitter coffee, the warm bread. You imagine them as if you had eaten them, savouring phantom flavours, but the hunger remains, gnawing deeper. Letters from the time hint at how workers often walked these streets as you do, drawn by scent, tempted by sight, but forced to choose absence. Some wrote that the hardest part of the day was not the machines, not the overseer, but this gauntlet of plenty they could not touch. Accounts contradict whether the city offered cruelty or comfort in such moments, but you feel both. The sun dips lower, shadows lengthening. Lamps flicker to life along the street, their glow soft against the haze. The vendors' voices grow more insistent, knowing evening will thin the crowd. You press your hand into your pocket, feel the faint clink of coins. You close your fist around them, then let go. Not tonight, not yet. You turn away from the stalls, hunger burning but resolve harder still. The crowd presses around you, laughter and shouts and scents filling the air. The city does not pause for your hunger, and you do not pause for it. You walk on, carrying the phantom taste of what you cannot have, the echo of temptation lingering long after the stalls fade behind you. The streets narrow again as you leave the vendors behind. The smell of sausages and chestnuts clings stubbornly, but soon it fades into coal smoke, horse manure, and the sour dampness rising from gutters. Your boots drag slightly, heavy with fatigue, each step an effort. The day's labour sits in your bones, in your shoulders, in your lungs. The tenement looms ahead, its brick walls streaked black with soot. Windows lean unevenly, some cracked, some patched with rags. Laundry lines droop across the alley, stiff with the day's cold. Children's voices echo faintly, but even they are subdued, softened by winter air. You climb the stoop, hand sliding along a rail polished by 1,000 other hands. Inside, the stairwell smells of boiled cabbage, coal smoke, and damp wood. The air is thick, nearly as heavy as the mill, though in a different way. You hear voices on every landing, arguments in one language, lullabies in another, the crash of a pan, the sharp bark of a laugh. The walls seem to vibrate with life, too much life packed too tightly together. You climb slowly, legs stiff, breath shallow. The stairs creak under your weight, each groan a reminder of the years this building has held too many bodies. You pass a neighbour carrying a bucket of coal. He nods, his face streaked with soot. Another door opens briefly, spilling out warmth, the smell of stew rich and savoury. For an instant you taste it on your tongue before the door slams shut again. At last you reach your own floor. The hallway is dim, lit only by a single lamp that flickers against peeling paint. You push open the door, and the familiar smell greets you. Thin soup, boiled potatoes, damp wool drying near the stove. Inside, the room is crowded, every surface carrying the mark of use. A cot leans against the wall. A trunk serves as a table. A single oil lamp casts shadows across the floor. You set down your coat and boots, rubbing your sore feet, and sink onto the cot. The mattress sags, straw poking through the fabric, but it feels like luxury compared to the boards of the mill. For a moment, you let your eyes close. Exhaustion presses heavy, tugging you towards sleep, but the sounds of the room draw you back. Your roommates gather around the table, voices low but steady. One counts coins, his fingers moving quickly, lips pressed thin. Another ladles soup from the pot, the steam carrying the scent of cabbage, onion, and little else. He sets the bowl in front of you, and you take it gratefully. The liquid is thin, nearly clear, but heat spreads through your chest with each spoonful. The potato at the bottom feels like treasure. The talk shifts from work to rent, to rumours of increases, to complaints about the landlord's neglect. Someone mutters that the roof leaks again. Another jokes bitterly that at least the leak means free water. Laughter rises, brief and sharp, before fading back into silence. Letters from reformers describe tenements as overcrowded, unsanitary, dangerous. Records suggest entire families often shared a single room like this. Or worse, several families crammed into spaces meant for one. Accounts contradict whether landlords cared at all. Some claimed repairs were promised. Others swore owners turned deaf ears. You believe the latter, sitting here, walls damp with moisture, air thick with smoke. A neighbour stops by, knocking once before entering. She carries a loaf of bread, hard but welcome. She breaks it in half, leaving one portion on the table. In return, your roommate offers her a bowl of soup. Exchanges like these keep the building alive. Small acts of solidarity stitched together by need. You finish your bowl slowly, scraping the bottom for the last bits of potato. Hunger eases, though never disappears. Still, warmth spreads through your limbs, enough to soften the ache of the day. You lean back, listening as conversation drifts again. Stories from home, jokes in fractured English, complaints about overseers, hopes whispered about strikes or better jobs. The lamp flickers, its oil running low. Shadows stretch across the walls, swallowing corners, hiding cracks and stains. You hear the faint scratching of rats between the boards. A baby wails down the hall. A man shouts for silence. Somewhere above, music drifts faintly. An accordion, the tune mournful yet sweet. You close your eyes briefly, letting the sounds wash over you. Each noise is harsh alone, but together they form a rhythm, as though the building itself breathes. It groans, sighs, mutters, sings. You are part of it, bound by walls and neighbours and survival. One roommate pulls a small book from his trunk, reading aloud by lamplight. His voice is steady, though the words are halting. English learned letter by letter. The story is simple, a tale of ships and sea, but in this room it feels grand. You listen, half asleep, the cadence lulling. When he stumbles, another corrects him, laughter bubbling. It is a fragile kind of education, but it carries hope. The night deepens. The soup pot sits empty, bowls stacked. The bread is gone, crumbs swept onto the floor, coins clink into a jar, rent set aside carefully, though the amount looks too small. The lamp sputters. threatening to die. You stretch out on the cot, pulling a thin blanket over your body. The straw pokes, the fabric scratches, but fatigue overcomes discomfort. You listen as your roommates settle too. Boots set aside, coats folded, breaths slowing. The building creaks, pipes groan, the city outside hums. You think of the mill, of the roar that still lingers in your ears. You think of the vendors, of the smells you could not taste. You think of the soup, warm but thin, of the bread shared, of the laughter fragile but real. Your body aches, but your chest carries a strange warmth, proof that life persists even here. As your eyes close, you hear the accordion again, the notes drifting faintly through the walls. The melody is low, wistful, almost like a lullaby. You let it carry you into sleep, into the promise of a few short hours before the whistle calls again. The cot groans as you shift, blanket tugged tight against the chill that creeps through the thin window. The day's ache lingers in every joint, but your mind refuses to rest just yet. Around you the room stirs softly, voices weaving together in tired conversation, thoughts too heavy to keep silent. One roommate, his hair still damp from washing in a cold basin, leans forward in the dim glow of the lamp. He speaks of a cousin who found work as a clerk, not in a mill but in an office. He describes desks lined with papers instead of spindles, ink-stained fingers instead of scarred ones. His voice carries awe, almost reverence, as if clerical work were not just a job but a doorway to another world. You listen, half dreaming, picturing yourself behind such a desk, pen scratching instead of thread snapping. The image feels fragile but intoxicating. Another man interrupts, shaking his head. "Clerks don't eat better than us," he mutters. His accent thick, pay is low, hours long, just no dust in lungs. Yet even he smiles faintly, as if to admit that lungs without dust are dream enough. The talk drifts to night schools. A woman across the hall once showed your roommate a flyer, classes in English, arithmetic, even history, held after long shifts. Some claim these schools are salvation, a chance to climb toward better jobs. Others scoff, saying fatigue swallows every lesson, that only the lucky can afford to stay awake after 14 hours of labour. Records from reformers praise these schools, though letters from workers themselves contradict, some calling them lifelines, others burdens. You picture yourself at a desk by lamplight, tracing words, numbers, ideas, while your body aches for sleep. The thought hovers, half hope, half impossibility. Coins clink again as someone counts rent money. The sound sharp in the silence. "If we could save more," he says. "We could open a shop, small maybe, shoes or bread. No overseer." Laughter rises, not mocking but wistful. The idea seems impossible, yet not absurd enough to discard entirely. Dreams survive here because they must. Politics enter the talk next. A newspaper clipping lies on the table, edges worn. It speaks of speeches promising labour reforms, shorter hours, laws against endless toil. Voices argue over whether such promises mean anything. Some insist change will come. Others say politicians use workers' hunger for votes, nothing more. Records from the period suggest both views held. Truth laws were debated. Some passed, many ignored. But tonight, in this room, the argument itself feels like hope, a reminder that voices beyond these walls still speak of your lives. Your body sinks deeper into the cot, yet your mind sharpens with these words. You imagine a future where bells do not dictate your day, where hands are not shredded by machines, where overseers' notebooks no longer hold your fate. The image is hazy, but it glows faintly, a light behind your eyes. The man with the bandaged hand flexes his fingers carefully. His voice is low, steady. One day, he says, our children will not work where we do. They will learn letters, not spindles. That will be my gift. His words hang heavy in the room. Some nod, others look away, but no one laughs. Even in exhaustion, the thought is sacred. You close your eyes briefly, picturing streets not coated in soot but lined with shops and schools, where voices are not drowned by machines. You imagine yourself older, body less weary, perhaps carrying books instead of spools. You know such images may never come, yet they feel necessary. Without them, the day would crush too completely. A knock on the wall draws your attention. It is the neighbour, signalling softly. The sound means only one thing. News. A man slips in, cheeks flushed from the cold outside. He carries whispers of a meeting planned for Sunday. Workers gathering to speak of unions, of rights, of standing together. His voice is hushed, his eyes darting toward the door, but excitement trembles beneath his caution. The room stirs. Some lean forward eagerly. Others shake their heads. Danger, one warns. Owners don't forgive. Another counters. Neither do the machines. The debate flickers like the lamp flame, bright, uncertain, fragile. You listen, pulse quickening. The idea of standing together feels both thrilling and terrifying, as if the dream itself could shatter the walls. The visitor leaves, and silence returns slowly. The lamp sputters, nearly out of oil. Your roommates settle, blankets pulled high, breath slowing, but your eyes remain open, fixed on the ceiling where cracks trace patterns like rivers. You let your mind wander again, chasing fragile futures. Historians suggest workers often carried dreams as shields, visions of better lives held close in the quiet moments between toil. Some accounts contradict whether those dreams eased suffering or deepened it. But here now you feel the truth. Without them, you would not endure. You picture a classroom, chalk dust instead of cotton lint, words unfolding across a blackboard. You imagine coins enough to buy a chestnut from a street vendor without hesitation. You see yourself walking without haste, without fear of whistles or overseers. These dreams are thin as smoke, but they fill your lungs better than the dust ever could. At last, fatigue wins. Your body sags deeper into the cot. Your eyes flutter closed. The voices fade. The lamp dies. The room slips into shadow. But in your mind the dreams remain, bright, fragile, necessary. They carry you into sleep, into a world softer than the one waiting when the whistle calls again. You lie on the cot, straw poking through thin fabric, blanket tugged to your chin against the creeping cold. The room is quiet now, save for the coughs of neighbours through the walls and the faint squeak of rats beneath the floorboards. Your body aches. Your lungs burn faintly, but exhaustion pushes you towards sleep. Yet even as your eyes close, the city continues beyond these walls, and another life unfolds elsewhere. You wake again, not in your own body, but in another. The room around you is wide, its walls papered with pale patterns of vines and flowers. Heavy curtains block the draught. A carpet muffles the sound of footsteps. You sink into a bed stuffed with feathers, the quilt thick and warm, your body cocooned in softness. The air smells faintly of polish and perfume, not dust. A small fire glows in the hearth, its crackle soft, the warmth steady. You stretch, bones loose, skin unscarred by work. Your hands, pale and smooth, have never tied spindles, never pulled thread until blood welled from your palms. Outside the window, the avenue is quiet, lined with carriages and the occasional sputtering automobile. Gas lamps glow, steady, not flickering. The street is clean, swept of litter, and no coal smoke drifts thick enough to choke. You hear footsteps, light, deliberate. A servant enters, carrying a tray of tea. The porcelain clinks as the cup is set upon the bedside table. Steam curls upward, carrying the scent of bergamot. You sip, the liquid smooth, fragrant, unhurried. It does not burn the throat like mill dust, does not scald like rushed coffee from a street stall. It soothes. In the next room, voices murmur, gentle, unstrained. A mother tells her child to dress. A father rustles the morning paper. The child laughs. The sound clear, unbroken by coughs. Toys scatter across the carpet, carved soldiers and painted blocks. No one shouts, no one weeps. The day begins softly, cushioned by wealth. At breakfast a table gleams with silver and china, eggs steaming, bread fresh, butter thick, fruit glistening. You cut into sausage, juices spilling across porcelain, and take a bite without thought of cost. You drink milk, cold and rich, not watered down, not shared among many. You eat not for survival but for choice, selecting what pleases, discarding what does not. Your clothes are crisp, tailored, wool is lined with silk, shoes polished until they shine. No patches, no frayed cuffs, no dust clinging to seams. You button your coat, the fabric smooth beneath your fingers, and step out into a carriage waiting by the curb. The driver tips his cap, horses snorting, leather harnesses gleaming. You climb in, unhurried, no whistle rushing you, no overseer waiting. This too is America in the early 1900s. The other America. You walk through the parlor of your home, sunlight catching on framed portraits and shelves stacked with books. You rest your hand on polished wood, smooth and shining, not roughened by years of touch. A piano sits by the wall, its keys ivory, ready for music at leisure. You sit perhaps and let your fingers play, not calloused, not raw, but nimble, trained by lessons instead of labour. The notes rise, pure, filling the air with sound chosen, not demanded. In the city you stroll along wide boulevards, lined with shops whose windows gleam with goods, jewels, silks, perfumes, clocks, novelties imported from abroad. You pause, consider, purchase without fear. Your pockets hold coins and bills enough to soften every temptation. Vendors call, but you need not bargain. Hunger is curiosity, not pain. At dinner, guests gather, voices rising over crystal glasses. Conversation drifts from politics to plays, from business to books. You speak of the stock market, of opera, of scientific wonders. You debate, not survival but philosophy. Records suggest such parlours glowed with gaslight, or the new electricity, casting golden light across velvet and lace. Accounts contradict, whether such luxury bred gratitude or complacency, but here it feels like a world apart, untouchable. Children upstairs drift into sleep, their rooms quiet, their beds soft. Their futures are mapped before them. Schools, perhaps universities, not mills. They will learn Latin, not the language of machines. Their lungs will not fill with cotton dust. Their skin will not bear scars from spindles. Their lives will unfold with choices, not demands. And yet, even in this other America, shadows linger. Whispers of strikes reach the parlour. Headlines of labour unrest rustle in the morning paper. Guests murmur of unrest in the streets, of immigrants crowding tenements, of sickness spreading through poor neighbourhoods. Some frown, others shrug, a few argue, but when the conversation shifts to dessert, to music, to travel plans, the shadows fade again, set aside with the empty plates. You shift once more, returning to your own cot, your own blanket, thin and rough. The tenement walls close in, the cough of a neighbour cuts the quiet, the smell of cabbage and smoke lingers, yet you cannot shake the images. The feather bed, the warm tea, the silver spoons, you have lived them, if only in imagination. Historians often describe the early 1900s as a nation divided, wealth towering beside poverty, fortunes made in towers while families crowded into basements. Some accounts insist opportunity was open to all. Others argue the gates were locked by birth. You lie here, caught between those truths, knowing both are real. For you, life is dust and sweat, but you dream of carpets and firelight. You imagine your body not bent by machines but rested, your lungs not raw but soothed by tea. These images sting, yet they also sustain. Without them, perhaps the weight of tomorrow would be unbearable. You close your eyes, the other America fading slowly, replaced by the creak of the cot, the draught at the window, the steady rhythm of breath in the dark. But the memory lingers, bright and painful. a vision of what exists just beyond reach. The morning whistle pulls you from shallow sleep, but the sound no longer feels as absolute as before. Beneath it you hear something else. Whispers, fragments of talk carried up stairwells, arguments muttered on the street corner, headlines shouted by boys no older than you. Change stirs in the city like a draft under the door, faint but undeniable. On your way to the mill, you pass a cluster of men gathered around a newspaper tacked to a wall. The print blurs in the weak light, but the headlines are clear enough. Strike in Massachusetts. Workers walk out. A boy calls the words aloud, his voice cracking with the weight of them. Some nod, faces fierce with approval. Others frown, muttering about lost wages, about families who cannot eat on pride alone. You pause, listening, then move on, but the words follow you, echoing in your steps. Inside the mill, the roar is the same. Machines still demand hands. Overseers still patrol with watchful eyes. Yet beneath the noise you catch flickers of conversation. A man leans close to his neighbour, whispering of organisers who visit boarding houses at night. A woman murmurs about petitions passed from hand to hand, written in 3 languages to reach every worker. The overseer's boots pass, and silence returns, but the words linger. At lunch, a tattered paper circulates through the yard. The print is smudged, but you can read enough. Accounts of accidents in other mills, stories of men crippled, families left hungry. Reformers write of shorter hours, of safety laws debated in the capital. Some scoff, saying politicians never cared, that promises are as thin as soup. Others hold the page like scripture, their eyes alight with cautious hope. You glance over shoulders, catching other headlines. A factory fire in Chicago, a coal strike in Pennsylvania, children marching with banners in Philadelphia. The images seem distant, almost unreal, yet you know they are woven from the same cloth as your own days, threads of dust, sweat, and defiance. Records from the time show such reports were common, though their accuracy was often debated. Some newspapers exaggerated for sympathy, others minimized for owners' favor. Letters from workers reveal both reactions, skepticism hardened by years of neglect and hope sharpened by desperation. You feel both as you hold the page, doubt heavy but longing stronger still. Back inside, the machines roar, yet you begin to notice how your fellow workers glance more often at each other than before. A nod lingers, a whispered phrase repeats. Union, strike, justice. Words dangerous enough to ruin lives, yet powerful enough to ignite them too. One evening, in the boarding house, your roommate reads aloud from a pamphlet. His voice shakes slightly, but the words are steady. No man should give 14 hours for pennies while owners dine in silk. He looks up, eyes searching the room. Silence follows, heavy, thoughtful. Then another man snorts, says strikes only starve families. The debate sparks again, voices rising, hands gesturing, anger and hope tangled together. You listen, pulse quickening, caught between fear of risk and longing for change. Later you hear more in the streets. Men gather near lamplight, their faces hidden by caps pulled low. They argue in hushed tones, voices rough. Some insist organization is the only way forward. Others warn of police, of clubs and jails. A woman passes, muttering about her husband blacklisted in Newark after a strike, forced to beg for day labor ever since. Her words hang like smoke, bitter and lasting. Historians write that workers of the era balanced on this knife's edge, trapped between immediate hunger and the promise of justice. Accounts contradict whether most leaned toward action or endurance, but every testimony agrees on the tension, lives pressed so tightly that any spark might light them. The overseer senses it too. His boots strike sharper, his notebook opens more often, his eyes narrow at every whisper, every pause, every slip of attention. He clears his throat more than usual, a sound like thunder meant to drown out softer murmurs. Yet even his authority cannot smother every word. The voices find cracks, leaking through the noise, surviving in glances and nods. On Sunday, you hear church bells ring across the city, their chime carried over rooftops. Inside the service, prayers mingle with talk of fairness, of dignity, of God's watch over labourers. The preacher's voice rises, not only in scripture but in protest, hinting at justice beyond wages. Some murmur, Amen, others bow their heads silently, unwilling to draw notice. But you feel the stir. It threads through the pews, through the hymn, through your own breath. Later, in the park, men stand on benches, voices booming. They speak of strikes in other cities, of victories small but real, hours shortened, pay raised, safety demanded. Crowds gather, workers pressing close, listening with hungry eyes. Police watch from the edges, batons at their sides, their silence louder than any threat. You shift uneasily, torn between fear and inspiration. That night, in your narrow cot, the echoes refuse to fade. You hear the machines still, the overseer's boots, the cough of neighbours, but you also hear something else. Chants rising in the streets, the cadence of voices lifted together. They hum in your chest as you drift towards sleep, mingling with dreams of futures not yet written. Historians suggest that change often begins not with grand gestures but with murmurs, echoes bouncing through boarding houses, whispered across spindles, shouted in markets. Whether those echoes swell into action or vanish into silence depends on courage, on hunger, on chance. You lie awake longer than usual, staring at the ceiling where shadows stretch like cracks in stone. You imagine them breaking wider, letting light pour through. You imagine voices louder than machines, stronger than overseers, fierce enough to shift the weight of the city itself. Sleep comes slowly, but when it does, the dreams are different. They are not only of bread and warmth, but of justice, of dignity, of lives reshaped by collective strength. You wake with the memory still in your chest, a steady thrum that feels almost like hope. The bells sound different on Sunday. They carry not urgency but invitation, their tones rolling over rooftops, softer than whistles, less commanding than overseers' boots. You rise slowly, body still heavy with yesterday's ache. But for once there is no rush, no machines waiting, no ledger ready to tally mistakes. Sunday is not freedom, not truly, but it is the closest you will taste. The tenement feels lighter this morning, doors open wider, voices warmer, even the stairwell less oppressive. Families step out in their best clothes, coats brushed, shoes shined as much as possible. Children tug at sleeves, laughter spilling into the air, though their cheeks are hollow and their hands still rough. Women adjust shawls, men straighten hats, all determined to show dignity despite worn seams. You step outside and the city greets you differently. Smoke still curls from chimneys, horses still clatter, vendors still shout, yet there is an ease, a slower rhythm. The factories are quiet, their great doors locked, their whistles silent. Even their silence seems to hum, as if the city itself exhales. You walk toward the market, joining the steady stream. The street widens into a square alive with stalls, canvas awnings flapping in the breeze. The smell is overwhelming. Fresh bread, roasted meats, coffee boiled strong, pickled vegetables tangy in their brine. For once it does not feel cruel, though you still count the coins in your pocket. Today you allow yourself the luxury of looking, of breathing in fully, of imagining without bitterness. At one stall, bright oranges gleam like suns piled high. The vendor slices one open, juice spilling, scent sharp and sweet. He offers slices to passing children, their faces sticky with delight. You remember how rare fruit is on your table, how an apple once felt like treasure. For a moment you almost buy one. Almost. A fiddler plays near the fountain, his bow sweeping quick, the tune sharp and merry. People gather, tapping boots, clapping hands, some even dancing. The sound cuts through the market noise, rising above the hum of voices and the creak of carts, letting the rhythm seep into your bones. It feels strange, almost dangerous, to stand without purpose, to move without command. The crowd is a mosaic. Irish voices rise in laughter. Italian mothers call to children. German men argue over prices. Jewish families bargain in Yiddish. The tongues weave together like threads, no longer swallowed by machines but free to clash and blend. Historians write that Sundays in immigrant neighborhoods were symphonies of languages, markets alive with accents. Some called it chaos, others beauty. Here, today, it feels like both. You buy a small roll from a baker's stall, the crust golden, the inside soft. It costs a penny, more than you should spare, but the warmth in your hand is worth it. You bite slowly, savoring every chew. The bread is simple, yet it tastes like celebration. Around you, others do the same, small indulgences that mark the day as different. Beyond the market, you walk to the park. The gates creak as you pass, and suddenly the air shifts. Grass spreads wide. Though patchy and trampled, trees rise thin but proud. The city noise dulls, softened by open space. Families spread blankets. Children chase one another. Couples stroll arm in arm. You find a bench and sink onto it, your legs grateful for the pause. You tilt your head back, looking at the sky. Clouds drift, pale against blue. For once you can see beyond rooftops, beyond chimneys. The air still tastes faintly of smoke, but here it feels cleaner, easier to breathe. You close your eyes, let the breeze touch your face, and imagine you are somewhere else entirely, fields perhaps, or a quiet village long left behind. A preacher stands near the fountain, Bible open, voice strong. He speaks not only of scripture but of justice, of labour as worthy of rest, of God seeing every calloused hand. Some gather, listening intently. Others roll their eyes, mutter about politics in disguise. Still, his words float across the park, mixing with the fiddler's tune, with children's laughter, with the hum of voices. You watch as a boy tosses a ball, his father catching it with clumsy joy. The ball rolls near your bench, and the boy dashes to retrieve it. He grins at you, gap-toothed, before racing back. You smile faintly, realizing how rare such likeness feels in your own life. Records suggest Sundays were often the only time workers saw themselves reflected as more than labour, as families, as neighbours, as people. Some accounts hint that even this respite was haunted by fear of Monday, but others insist the day carried enough light to sustain the week. Sitting here, you feel both truths. The ache in your body does not vanish, but it eases. Later you wander back through the market. Lanterns begin to glow as dusk settles. Their light soft golden. Vendors shout their final offers, lowering prices, eager to sell what remains. You consider buying another roll, maybe even a pickle, but you resist. Hunger is dulled enough, and tomorrow's rent waits. Still, the scents linger in your nose, sweetened now with memory. As you return to the tenement, the stairwell hums with voices. Families return from church, from park, from market. Children chatter. Parents scold gently. Laughter rises through thin walls. For once the building feels less like a cage and more like a hive, buzzing with life. In your room, the lamp glows softly. Soup simmers again, this time with a carrot or two added, small luxuries saved for Sunday. You eat slowly, grateful, listening as stories spill around the table. Someone jokes about a preacher shouting louder than the fiddler. Another laughs about a neighbour's dance steps. The air feels warmer, lighter. Later, lying on your cot, you feel the difference in your chest. Sunday has not erased hunger or labour, but it has offered breath, colour, sound beyond the machine's roar. It is enough to carry you into the next week, enough to remind you that life holds more than survival. Your eyes close and you hear again the fiddler's tune, the crunch of bread, the laughter of children in the park. For a moment, even in the dark, you almost believe the world could be lighter still. The whistle drags you back again, sharp and merciless, erasing the softness of Sunday. The mill doors creak open, the machines groan awake, and dust begins its familiar dance in the stale air. Yet something lingers from yesterday. The echo of laughter in the park, the warmth of bread eaten slowly, the sound of fiddles. Fragile, yes, but enough to remind you that life is not only labour. The rows fill with bodies once more, sleeves are rolled up, belts lash overhead, spindles spin to their frantic hum. The roar swells until thought itself feels swallowed, and still, amid this noise and dust, moments of kindness thread quietly through the day. Near you, a woman coughs hard, doubled over, her face pale with the strain. Before the overseer can notice, another worker shifts closer, reaching to steady her machine for a few breaths. His hands move quick, practiced, making it look as though nothing has changed. She wipes her eyes, steadies herself, and returns. No words are exchanged, but the gesture is clear. I will hold you up until you can stand again. Later, as the hours grind forward, your stomach gnaws at itself. The crust of bread from breakfast has long vanished, leaving only hunger's sharp edge. A man across from you catches your eye. He reaches into his pocket and pulls a scrap of cheese, hard and small. He breaks it, passes half across the machine. You hesitate, but he presses it into your palm, his face stern, almost scolding. You nod in gratitude, swallowing both cheese and pride. The salt lingers on your tongue, sharper than kindness itself. Historians often note that solidarity grew in such exchanges, not only in unions or strikes, but in quiet gifts of food and shoulders shared against burdens. Letters from workers describe how a cigarette passed, a joke whispered, a rag lent at the right time, mattered as much as pay. Accounts contradict whether these gestures bound workers long term, but in the moment they eased the endless drag of the day. The overseer's boots echo and conversation dies, but as soon as he turns away, murmurs rise again. Snatches of stories from villages left behind, jokes muttered in broken English, songs hummed low enough to vanish into the machine's hiss. You hear laughter, brief and surprising, and it cuts through the dust like sunlight through clouds. You join, adding a small story of your own, something simple, almost foolish. The man beside you chuckles, shaking his head, eyes bright for a moment. You feel lighter, as though the mill itself has loosened its grip. Even the machines cannot crush every sound. An hour later, the bandaged man struggles with a bale of cotton, his injured hand trembling. You step forward without thought, catching the weight with your own shoulder. Together you heave it onto the platform. Muscles burning, he exhales, nods once, muttering thanks. Your arms ache, but your chest feels steadier. Shared burdens always weigh less. At lunch, the yard fills with weary bodies again. This time, though, you sit in a circle with others. Bread is broken, soup shared from one tin to another. Someone produces an onion, slicing it with a dull knife, dividing it evenly among 6 hands. The taste is sharp, biting, but laughter rises at the absurdity of feasting on something so small. For a moment, you all eat as though it were enough. A newspaper appears, its pages worn thin. Men and women lean close, eyes scanning headlines. Another strike, another accident, another speech. Voices argue, some hopeful, some bitter. Yet the act of reading together feels binding, as though knowledge itself were bread to be divided. You listen, letting the words sink into you, even those you cannot fully trust. Back inside, the machines roar again, yet you notice small rebellions of kindness everywhere. A man ties a woman's loose hair back before the overseer sees. A worker steadies another's shaking hands during a knot. A joke ripples down the row, whispered from ear to ear until even you catch the grin. The overseer scowls, but he cannot trace the source. You realize solidarity here is not grand, not loud. It does not announce itself with banners or speeches. Not yet. It lives in crumbs of bread, in shoulders lent, in laughter stolen. It is fragile but persistent, weaving itself into the day like thread. Toward evening, the machines falter briefly, a belt snapping loose. Dust fills the air, workers scatter, and the mechanic rushes forward. In the chaos, You see another man trip, falling hard against the boards. Before the overseer can bark, 3 others are there, lifting him, steadying him, brushing dust from his coat. Their movements are swift, invisible almost, the kind of help that looks like nothing at all if seen from afar. But up close, you know it is everything. The overseer passes, notebook in hand. His gaze lingers, suspicious, but he says nothing. He cannot write down what he has not seen. The machines resume, the rhythm restored, and life presses on. As dusk settles outside, the hall glows dim, lamps burning low. Bodies sag with fatigue, yet hands keep moving. You glance around, catching the small signs of endurance, cheeks flushed with laughter, crumbs shared secretly, eyes that meet briefly in silent acknowledgement. These are the threads that keep you from unraveling. Historians might argue whether solidarity in such halls was enough to bring change. Some accounts insist it laid the foundation for unions and strikes. Others say it was swallowed by poverty and fear, but in this moment, it is enough. It holds you upright when your legs tremble, keeps your hands steady when they falter. It reminds you that though the machines roar louder than voices, you are not alone inside them. When the whistle finally sounds, sharp and final, you feel the weight of the day, but also its strange lightness. You file out with the others, shoulders brushing, the crowd moving as one. The air outside tastes cold, almost clean, and you hear laughter again, tired, weak, but real. Walking back toward the tenement, you carry the day's kindnesses with you. They are not much, but they are more than nothing. They are proof that even in the mill's shadow, humanity survives, in bread broken, in weight shared, in laughter stolen from dust. And as the city's lamps flicker on, casting their glow over cobblestones and smoke, you realize solidarity is not only an idea whispered in pamphlets. It is here, in your chest, in every hand that reaches for another. It is the quiet strength that keeps you standing, ready to face the next day when the whistle calls again. The final whistle cuts the day loose. It wails long and hollow, echoing off the brick walls of the mill, spilling into streets already thick with smoke. For a moment you stand still, head bowed, fingers aching from hours of endless repetition. The roar of machines fades behind you, yet its ghost hums inside your ears, as if the spindles have stitched themselves into your blood. The gates open and the crowd surges outward. Boots scrape against cobblestones, shoulders brush, voices rise. The air outside is cold, sharp against your damp skin. You draw it in deeply, coughing on soot and dust, but even that feels lighter than the stale furnace of the mill. Lamps flicker to life, their glow soft against the gathering dusk. Vendors still call from their stalls, though their voices are tired now. The smell of chestnuts lingers, of bread and meat, tempting but cruel. You glance once, then lower your eyes. Hunger is constant, but coins must stretch further. You walk past, letting the scents fade behind you. The city at night is a different creature. Horses clatter, carriages rattle, trolley bells clang, but beneath it all hums a softer rhythm. Voices drifting from taverns, laughter spilling from stoops, the distant strains of a violin. Shadows stretch long across the streets, merging into alleys where figures move quickly, faces hidden. You quicken your pace, boots striking stone in rhythm with the crowd. The tenement looms ahead, its windows glowing faintly with lamplight. Laundry still hangs stiff across the alley, forgotten in the cold. You climb the stoop, legs heavy, and push into the stairwell. The air inside is thicker still, filled with coal smoke, cabbage, damp wood, and the faint scent of kerosene from lamps burning too low. Neighbours pass on the stairs, nodding, muttering greetings in accents heavy with fatigue. Children cling to skirts, their eyes wide with sleep. A man coughs violently, leaning against the railing before climbing onward. You step carefully, each board groaning beneath your weight, as if the building itself were weary. Your own door creaks open, revealing the familiar shadows of your room. A single lamp glows on the table, its flame trembling. The soup pot simmers faintly. Though nearly empty, a crust of bread sits beside it, broken into pieces. Your roommates gather, shoulders slumped, faces pale, but voices low and steady. You sink onto the cot, the straw poking, the fabric rough, yet your body sighs in relief. The soup is ladled into bowls, thin, watery, flavoured only by cabbage leaves and a scrap of bone. Still, the warmth spreads through your chest, easing the gnawing in your stomach. You chew the bread slowly, letting each bite linger. Around you, conversation drifts. A complaint about the overseer's sharp eye. A laugh about a vendor's shouted bargain. A mutter about rumours of strikes. The words rise and fall like the tide, sometimes sharp, sometimes soft, always carrying the weight of exhaustion. After the meal, the room settles, coins are counted, clinking into a jar. The total is never enough, but it is all you have. One man pulls out a letter, its paper creased and smudged. He reads aloud haltingly. News from home, words of family, of fields, of longing. His voice trembles, and the room falls silent, each face shadowed with memory. The letter is folded again, tucked away carefully, as though it were treasure. You stretch out on the cot, blanket pulled high, breath slowing. The lamp is turned low, shadows deepening. Outside, the city continues. You hear the clang of a trolley, the clatter of hooves, the faint call of a vendor selling late-night coffee. Voices rise from the street, laughter, argument, a lullaby sung in a tongue not your own. The tenement walls are thin. Every sound leaks through, weaving together into a patchwork of noise that never truly sleeps. The building itself groans, pipes rattling, floorboards creaking, rats scratch faintly in the walls, bold enough to be heard now that human voices fade. You pull the blanket tighter, shutting your eyes against the darkness. But sleep does not come quickly. The day lingers in your muscles, in your ears, in your chest. You feel the phantom tremor of the mill beneath your feet, hear the echo of the overseer's boots, see the spray of blood against spindles. You turn, restless, seeking comfort that will not come. At last, fatigue overwhelms. Your breath deepens, shoulders soften. You drift, though even in dreams the mill intrudes. You see belts whipping above, threads snapping, dust swirling thick. But you also hear laughter from the yard, smell chestnuts on the street, taste bread shared in silence. The dream is both burden and balm. Historians suggest nights in the tenements were restless, filled with coughs, with arguments, with the cries of children. Some accounts insist exhaustion silenced everything. Others describe noise so constant sleep felt like illusion. Tonight you feel both truths. The building hums around you, but your body surrenders regardless. As you fade, the city outside softens too. The lamps burn steady. The voices grow distant. The night stretches wide. You are one of thousands lying in narrow rooms, breath rising and falling in rhythm with a city that never truly sleeps. And though tomorrow will bring the whistle again, tonight you let yourself sink into the dark, fading into night with the fragile hope that dreams might carry you somewhere softer. The night deepens, and though your eyes close, your mind does not rest. It drifts, weaving itself into visions beyond the mill, beyond the tenement, beyond the hunger that presses daily. You imagine a future not yet real, but possible, fragile as thread. You see yourself standing taller, no longer bent by hours at the spindle. Your hands are still rough, but they grip something else, a pen perhaps, or tools that do not cut skin so easily. The overseer's boots are gone, replaced by your own steady steps, free of fear. The machines still exist, but they no longer dictate your breath. Instead you walk past them as though they were relics, reminders of labour endured, not chains unbroken. You imagine a schoolroom, desks lined in rows, chalk dust floating gently in the air. A teacher speaks, voice patient, steady, guiding young minds through letters, numbers, stories. You sit among them, not as a child now, but as someone who hungers for knowledge long denied. You trace words on the board, your hands steady, your mind alive with possibility. In another vision, it is your younger brother or sister who sits at that desk, their hands unscarred, their eyes unclouded by fatigue. Either way, the future holds more than spindles. Historians often note how dreams of change carried workers through the hardest days. Some accounts insist those dreams became action, fueling strikes, reforms, and new laws. Others argue many dreams dissolved into the grind of necessity. But as you drift in half-sleep, you feel the truth is simpler. Dreams matter because they keep the body moving, even when the world would have you collapse. You picture a meeting in a hall, voices rising not in whispers but in unison. Workers stand shoulder to shoulder, their accents blending into one rhythm, their chants louder than any machine. You feel the power in their voices, a strength no overseer's notebook can erase. Whether this vision becomes real or remains only hope, it warms you all the same. Your mind drifts further. You imagine meals where bread is not counted crumb by crumb, where soup is rich and thick, where fruit gleams on every table. You imagine coats without patches, boots without holes, rooms where fire burns warm without fear of coal running out. These images are small, domestic, but they shine brighter than gold. Then the vision grows larger still. You see towers of steel rising above the city, taller than any smokestack, gleaming in sunlight. You see bridges spanning wide rivers, carrying trains and carriages across with ease. You see ships in harbours, their decks crowded not with exhausted labourers, but with travellers, eyes wide with wonder. You are among them, stepping forward into a world more open, more possible. And yet, even as you dream, you feel the weight of doubt. Will such futures arrive in your lifetime, or only in stories told later? Records suggest many workers never saw the reforms they longed for. That change came slowly, painfully, often after lives were already bent and broken. Letters hint at hope carried forward like a torch, passed from one generation to the next. Perhaps your part is only to keep it lit long enough to hand it on. Still, you cling to the vision. You imagine telling a child one day, your own perhaps, or a neighbour's, that you once worked until your lungs burned, until your hands bled, but that things are better now. You imagine their disbelief, their eyes wide, their voices saying, "Truly, people lived like that?" And you nod, quietly proud that the world they inherit no longer demands the same sacrifice. The tenement creaks around you, voices muffled through thin walls. Someone snores, someone coughs, someone hums a tune faint as a thread. The city outside is restless still, trolleys clanging, carriages rattling, laughter drifting up from taverns. Yet within your mind the noise fades. Only the vision remains, a city where life is more than survival, where dreams are not just whispers in the night. You roll onto your side, pulling the blanket closer. The cot groans, straw shifting, but you hardly notice. Your body is heavy with fatigue, but your thoughts carry you upward, past the ceiling cracks, past the chimney smoke, into the wide sky beyond. Historians say that every generation dreams of a future it may never see. Some visions fade, others endure, shaping laws, shaping lives. Tonight, in your narrow room, you carry that truth within you. You dream not only for yourself, but for those who will come after, for voices not yet born, for hands not yet scarred. Sleep settles slowly, wrapping you at last. The visions dim but do not vanish. They linger, soft as candlelight, steady as breath. You fade into rest with the image of tomorrow brighter than today, carrying hope like a thread woven into cloth, strong enough to last. The world of the early 1900s fades now, its sound softening as though carried down a long hallway. The roar of machines grows distant, their thunder reduced to a faint hum, then silence. The overseer's steps vanish. The dust settles, the lamps dim. You are safe here. Your breath is steady, your body warm beneath the blanket. The weight of the day drifts from your shoulders like smoke dissolving into air. Hunger quiets, aches ease, and the city outside grows softer with every exhale. The narrow cot beneath you no longer scratches. It holds you gently, like earth holding seed. The shadows on the ceiling blur and fade, becoming only darkness. You feel your muscles loosen, your chest rise and fall with calm rhythm. Each breath deepens, slower, quieter, more peaceful. The sounds that linger are no longer the cries of vendors or the clang of trolleys, but something gentler, the hush of night air, the faint hum of memory turning to dream. You let them pass through you, each softer than the last. You picture a warm light glowing just beyond reach, steady and kind. You walk toward it not with effort, but with ease, your steps lighter, your body free. The burdens of the mill, the crowded streets, the weight of the overseer's gaze, all fall away. What remains is only rest. You are safe now. That world fades behind you. Tomorrow belongs to history, but tonight belongs to your breath, your stillness, your sleep. Let your eyes grow heavy, your mind drift. Allow yourself to sink into the quiet, into the dark, into the peace that waits for you. Sweet dreams.